Welcome back to Make Build Modify. I'm Justin. Today I'd like to show you a shed trailer hack. It was originally a dump trailer, and as a matter of fact it still remains a dump trailer. I just took the upper portion off and built an upper deck for moving sheds, and the two are interchangeable. This is just after I removed the upper portion of the dump trailer from the lower deck portion. The lower portion has all the electronics and hydraulics for the dump section, and I designed it to where I could tip the bed up slightly, throw these legs under the receivers for the bed stakes. Then there's a couple pins that are pivot pins, hinge pins, on the lower and upper deck, and I could just drive those pins out and pull that upper portion off, pull the trailer out from underneath it, and then I could do the same process in reverse to put the upper shed moving deck on the lower portion of this thing. Here's another shot of the upper deck portion of the dump trailer, and there's some steel metal that goes up through the stake beds here, and the same thing in the back. And it just sits there until you need to put the lower portion of the trailer back together. In this shot, we have the lower portion of the upper deck of the shed moving trailer. What I mean by that is this section here is basically an exact match to the lower portion of the dump trailer. If you look back here, you can kind of see framing and 2x3 steel stock. That's the same size material for this. There's also a channel here, matches up. So this is basically an identical match to the dump trailer without the sheet metal on top. And then I'm going to do another frame on top of that that is the deck for receiving trailers. This is the new framing in the lifted position. I was testing the pins and the hydraulics to see if it worked, and it was fine. Another shot. Let's get closer on the actual hinge here. This is basically the same as a house door hinge. You've got hollow pipe on each side. This wider piece is on the lower deck. These two shorter pieces are on the upper deck, and then you just drive a pin in there. And I just had a couple keeper pins that went through the side to keep the larger pins from sliding out in transit. Okay, so here's the upper portion of the upper deck. This is the portion that's going to receive the sheds. It's broader, it goes over the top of the wheels, and it was designed to handle a 10-foot wide shed. I think it was 10 by 12 sheds that I had planned on moving. I ended up moving a lot more 8 by 10 sheds. It worked well for the process. You'll see in a little bit of the rails that I install on this to handle the skids of the shed. At this point, I was beginning to figure the geometry for the front of the upper deck. I wanted it to match the nose of the trailer, the lower portion of the trailer, and I wanted to have a location to mount a 15,000-pound winch that would run off the same battery that runs the hydraulics on the dump trailer portion. I decided to run the nose out below the upper framing and double it up. And this is just the beginning of the angles and the process of matching this lower section here. There's also this trailer receiver that is going to be the mount for the winch. So here's that upper nose. I have the long sections that go underneath the upper deck and tie into the lower portion of the upper deck. I also have this extra piece that's a reinforcement that ran right into the upper portion of the upper deck. Here's that receiver. I think this is 1/2-inch plate, and for, I think, probably grade 5, grade 8 bolts. I don't know. They were strong, whatever I used. You can see here that I've got some channel. This is, I think, 5-inch wide channel, maybe 5x2 channel. I designed it to where I could adjust these channels on these rails in and out so the width of the skids on the shed wouldn't matter. I painted it with black Rust-Oleum, just rattle canned it. I remember this night I painted and I was so sick because I didn't wear a mask and I thought I was being outside would be safe, but man, I really got sick painting that night. Here are the skids painted with primer, and you can see the U-bolts, so you can get a better shot. I just used U-bolts to go under the framing. I just used some angle iron with some holes drilled in it to match that rail. And you just loosen those up and adjust the rails. Here's the trailer in the full lift position. The back of the trailer was designed to tilt down and touch the earth. I also wanted the skids to extend past the upper deck portion so they'd be in the gravel, so the shed could be guided, the skids could be guided right onto those tracks. Here's a lift-in process. This shed was a display shed. I built it on site on a home that was being shown for sale, and I was trying to attract some customers that way. When the house was sold, I needed to move this shed. I think this might have been the first attempt with this trailer. I built these sheds with an extended skid because I knew that they needed to be lifted with this trailer. I also had a triangular kind of a truss shape piece of metal that would go through or be mounted between the skids, and this cable would attach to that little truss to pull the shed up without putting a lot of force on the rest of the building. You can kind of see, let me zoom in here. That's the truss right there. Is the hook goes into the center of the truss, and this thing goes between the two skids. You can see the pipe that goes through. So the skids are just drilled with a large bore drill bit that slid between the skids, and then you run a pipe through there. Really easy to install and take out of the shed when you need to move it. Another shot before the lift. You can see the power for the winch is attached to the battery that runs the hydraulics for the trailer. So a dual purpose battery. Typically at this point when loading a shed, I would tilt the trailer bed down just a little bit to reduce the angle. That way the shed would slide up on the trailer deck a little more easily. This winch could handle it though. It would pull it all the way up if it was fully tipped. I just didn't feel like straining the cable or the winch at the time. These things pulled right on, no problem. Another shot, you can see the skids. They're basically digging into the gravel right now, and it's just the last little bit of the skid that's in the dirt at this point. And so you can see it's important to have the skid sticking past the shed a little bit so that the rear portion of the shed's not dragging in the earth. At this point, we're basically lowering the deck just like you would with any dump trailer. We end up strapping over the front of the skids of the shed on the front and the rear to hold the thing down. Basically at that point, it's travel ready. It's my brother. He was giving me some help when I did this first lift. At this point, we decided to check the trailer and to see whether it was well centered on the axle because we wanted the load to have a little bit of tongue weight. If you've ever driven a trailer with too much tail weight, you know you can get the speed wobbles. So we were trying to position the weight of this trailer to make it safe to drive down the road. All right, that's it for this build. I hope this was helpful. Maybe it gave you some ideas for your own shed moving trailer. Maybe it inspired you to build one for your own needs. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. I'll have a list of tools and materials listed in the description. And if you think I earned it, please subscribe.